The training field at Fort Branton stretched endlessly beneath the morning sun, an ocean of dust, camouflage, and disciplined chaos. Hundreds of soldiers were already assembled in formation, their boots planted, their rifles slung, their eyes forward. But something unusual hung in the air that morning, something tight, expectant, electric. And it all began the moment Lena Wyatt stepped onto the field. She wasn't tall, she wasn't bulky. She didn't look like the kind of person who could silence a battalion by simply existing. But the soldiers felt it anyway, the way she walked with quiet precision, the way her gaze swept across the field like she was measuring every exit, every angle, every heartbeat. Lena was a combat instructor now, but most of the soldiers didn't know who she truly was. Not yet. Not until that moment. All they knew was the rumor. The new instructor is a woman. She's only 30. Bet she's never seen a real fight. Soldiers whispered. They smirked. They nudged each other with arrogance born of ignorance. And at the far end of the formation stood the man who would set everything in motion. Sergeant Cole Maddox. A mountain of muscle. A brawler. A man who believed respect was earned through fear alone. And today, he didn't like the idea of taking orders from someone half his size. The commanding officer stepped forward, his voice booming across the field. Listen up. Today's advanced combat training will be conducted by Instructor Wyatt. I expect full cooperation. She will demonstrate techniques most of you haven't seen. A ripple of murmurs moved through the ranks, and then Cole's voice thundered over everyone else. You're telling me she is going to teach us hand-to-hand combat? The field went dead silent. Lena didn't flinch, didn't blink. She just looked at him with that unreadable calm, the kind of calm that made some soldiers feel uneasy without knowing why. The captain stepped in sharply. Sergeant Maddox, stand down. But Maddox wasn't interested in discipline today. He wanted a show. He wanted to embarrass her. He wanted to prove something to the crowd of 282 soldiers watching. He stepped out of formation, cracking his knuckles. You know what? Let's see what you've got, instructor. Gasps. Whispers. Half the soldiers looked excited, the other half worried. But Lena simply laid her training bag on the ground and loosened her shoulders. Her voice was calm. Sergeant Maddox, return to your line. This is a controlled demonstration. Maddox smirked. You scared? That word hung in the air. A few soldiers laughed. Lena didn't. She took 2 steps forward, hands relaxed at her sides. You misunderstand, she said quietly. I am trying to protect you. More laughter, louder this time. But at that exact moment, every soldier who laughed would later say the same thing. They suddenly wished they had stayed quiet. The moment, everything changed. Maddox lunged. Not a slow, telegraphed move, a real attack, sharp, fast, fueled by ego and testosterone. He swung his arm, aiming to grab her shoulder. He didn't know he had already lost. Before half the soldiers even registered movement, Lena's body shifted, one fluid, precise motion. She stepped inside his strike. Her left hand snapped up, her right shoulder turned, her hip anchored, and then... crack. The sound was unmistakable, raw, sharp, final. Maddox's arm bent at a direction human bones aren't designed to bend. A gasp rolled across the field, 282 soldiers watching their strongest comrade collapse, with a scream that tore across the silence. Lena didn't follow him to the ground. She simply stepped back, composed, controlled, breathing steady. A medic ran forward. Others froze in disbelief. Lena finally spoke. Never attack someone who isn't attacking you. Lesson 1. Her tone wasn't cold. It wasn't cruel. It was instructional, almost gentle. Then she turned to the stunned crowd. Now that I have your attention, we can begin. The crowd's reaction. The soldiers stared at her like they were seeing a weapon disguised as a woman. No one laughed now. No one whispered. No one smirked. For the first time, they understood. This wasn't just an instructor. This wasn't just a new face. This was someone who had walked through wars they had never heard of, faced enemies they'd never meet, and survived battles no training manual could describe. And as the sun climbed higher over the training field, a new kind of silence settled over the troops. Not mockery, not doubt. Respect. Pure, unshakable respect. Ending beat of part 1. Little did any of them know. Breaking Maddox's arm wasn't the real story. It wasn't even close. Because within the next 48 hours, Lena Wyatt would reveal exactly why she fought the way she fought, why she moved like no one they had ever seen, and why her presence at Fort Branton wasn't just training. It was a warning.
The training field felt different the next morning. The usual chatter of soldiers warming up, the clatter of rifles being checked, boots striking gravel, wind cutting across the open yard. But beneath all of it, there was something else, a strange heaviness, like the base itself was holding its breath. Because everyone remembered what happened 24 hours ago. They remembered the silence, the crack, the scream, and the calm expression on the face of the woman who caused it. Instructor Lena Wyatt. She walked onto the field again, her boots steady, her expression unreadable. 200 soldiers straightened instantly. No one dared whisper this time. Every pair of eyes followed her, and yet none of them truly understood what they were seeing. Not yet. The unexpected visitor. As the morning drill began, a black military SUV rolled across the compound, heading straight toward the training yard. Drivers rarely entered this zone during drills. The soldiers exchanged glances. Even Lena paused, her breath steady, but her eyes narrowing. The SUV stopped. The door opened, and a man stepped out. Older, tall, a decorated uniform heavy with medals earned from the wrong kinds of missions. Colonel Jason Cade. The moment Lena saw him, a flicker of something dangerous flashed across her face. Recognition. Memory. Pain carefully buried. No one noticed, except the colonel. He smiled faintly. Not a warm smile. Not a respectful smile. A smile that said, "I found you." The commanding officer rushed forward to greet him. "Colonel Cade, sir, you weren't scheduled to visit." "I go where I'm needed," he replied, his eyes never leaving Lena. The soldiers felt the tension. Thick, cold, unsettling. Then Cade stepped onto the field and addressed the troops. "I hear you all witnessed quite the show yesterday." A few soldiers shifted nervously. No one dared speak. Cade's voice grew sharper. "A broken arm, was it? Impressive, for someone who's been hiding in classrooms the last 2 years." Lena didn't react, but everyone else felt the insult. The commanding officer stepped forward quickly. "Sir, Instructor Wyatt has an exemplary—" Cade cut him off with a raised hand. "I'm aware of her history. All of it. He walked closer to Lena now. The soldiers watched, some confused, some uneasy. But Cade said quietly, "But it seems many here do not know who she actually is." Murmurs rippled through the formation. Then he said the words that froze everyone. Lena Wyatt, former Shadow Program operative. Dead silence. A few soldiers looked at each other, wide-eyed. Others swallowed hard. Everyone knew the rumors. The Shadow Program, a covert training unit, a place where soldiers vanished from records, a place whispered to be more brutal than combat zones. But no one ever met someone who had survived it. Until now. The revelation. Cade stepped even closer, lowering his voice. "You broke Maddox's arm without hesitation. Classic shadow conditioning." Lena's eyes darkened. That wasn't conditioning. That was restraint. The soldiers felt a chill. Cade's smirk didn't fade. "You're the same, even after everything that happened that night." A pause. A long one. Soldiers leaned in subconsciously. What night? But Lena finally spoke. "This base doesn't need your provocations, Colonel. Let me conduct my training." "Training?" Cade laughed softly. "No, Wyatt. I'm not here to interrupt your morning exercise." He turned to the commanding officer. "I'm here to test her." Gasps moved through the ranks like a wave. The test. Cade snapped his fingers. The SUV doors opened again. 3 soldiers stepped out. Not normal soldiers. Their posture was too rigid. Their expressions too empty. Their movements too precise. Operatives. Shadow Program operatives. Lena felt her chest tighten. Not from fear, from recognition. Cade announced, "These 3 will face Instructor Wyatt in a controlled demonstration. Full speed, no restrictions." The commanding officer's face went pale. "Sir, that's extremely dangerous." "That's the point," Cade said coldly. Lena's voice cut through the tension. "I will not fight them." Cade stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "You don't have a choice." She stared back, unblinking. "I left the program for a reason." "And that reason," Cade whispered, "is standing right in front of you." The soldiers watched, lost in confusion and awe. They had thought she was just a combat instructor with impressive skills. Now they saw something else entirely. A woman who walked away from a world of ghosts, only to have those ghosts walk back into the sunlight. The countdown. Cade stepped back, raising his hand. "Operatives, on my mark." The 3 men took their positions in a triangle around Lena. Silent, lethal, synchronized. And Lena didn't move backward. She moved forward, straight toward the first strike. Because the only thing more dangerous than the Shadow Program is the woman who survived it.
The field was so silent that even the wind seemed to stop moving. 282 soldiers stood frozen, eyes locked, breaths held, watching the impossible unfold. 3 elite operatives, graduates of the same brutal Shadow Program that had once built Lena Wyatt into a weapon, were closing in on her from 3 angles. Fast, precise, coordinated. But Lena didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't even shift her weight. She simply watched them, like a predator watching 3 others who didn't know they'd already lost. The fight begins. The first operative struck from the right, clean, sharp, a strike meant to break ribs. Lena rotated a single inch, 1 inch. The blow skimmed past her, harmless. Her hand snapped to his wrist, not grabbing, not wrenching, just guiding, using his momentum against him. The man flew past her, stumbling forward. Before he hit the ground, Lena had already moved. The second operative launched a high spin kick toward her temple. Perfect technique, perfect timing. But Lena ducked, sliding under him like water flowing around stone. She rose behind him, placing 2 fingers lightly at the back of his neck, a point only a shadow graduate would know. A nerve cluster, a shutdown switch. The soldier's body locked, his legs buckled. He dropped silently into the dirt. Gasps shot through the watching troops. They weren't seeing combat anymore. They were seeing anatomy, physics, and instinct all fused into one lethal force shaped like a woman. The third attacker. The last operative didn't hesitate. He lunged with a knife. Real blade, real steel, real intent. Soldiers yelled warnings. The commanding officer tried to move. Colonel Cade merely smirked, but Lena's eyes, they changed. Not anger, not fear, a kind of sadness, as if she had seen this exact attack thousands of times before. The knife slashed toward her ribs, fast enough to kill. Lena pivoted sideways, her hand snapping up and striking his forearm with the softest tap. To the soldiers, it looked gentle, but the operative's arm instantly went numb, knife falling from his hand. Before he knew what went wrong, Lena had already stepped behind him, hooked her arm around his neck, and swept his leg from under him. He slammed onto the ground, hard. Lena stepped back. 3 men, 10 seconds, not a single wasted movement. It was over. The reaction of the troops. For a moment, the soldiers didn't even breathe. Then, as the adrenaline caught up, they erupted. What was that? She dropped them like nothing. She didn't even break a sweat. Is this real? Is this even human? Some were terrified. Some were thrilled. All were stunned. The commanding officer looked at Lena like he was seeing her for the first time, because he was. But Colonel Cade, he just clapped slowly. A hollow clap, a dangerous clap, a clap that meant, you still haven't escaped me. Colonel Cade's warning. He stepped forward, eyes locked on Lena. Well done. Still efficient, still lethal, still predictable. Lena's jaw tightened. This wasn't a test, she said softly. This was intimidation. Cade nodded. Of course it was. You walked away from the program. You thought you could disappear in basic training fields. You thought teaching rookies would erase what you've done. He leaned closer. But nothing you touch stays peaceful, Wyatt. It never has. Some soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. What did he mean? What did she do? What happened in the shadow program? Cade continued. You think these 3 are dangerous? They were the weakest, the expendables. His voice dropped lower. The one coming next, he's the reason you left. Lena's breath froze. Her eyes widened, barely, but enough for Cade to see. And he smiled. The name that shattered her stillness. Do you remember him, Wyatt? He whispered. Your partner, your rival, your equal? He paused, then said the name. Rook. The color drained from Lena's face. The soldiers sensed the shift instantly. They didn't know the name, but they felt it. A storm had entered the storyline. A shadow darker than the 3 she had just defeated. A ghost she hoped never to see again. Cade straightened, brushing dust from his uniform. He arrives tomorrow, and when he does, I want him to see the look on your face when he breaks you. The field went deathly silent. Lena didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She didn't brag. She simply said, I'm not the same person he remembers. Cade stepped back. Oh, I'm counting on that. After all, he's not the same either. He walked away, leaving tension hanging like a blade over every soldier's head. The soldiers gathered around. As the operatives were taken away and medics arrived, the troops slowly approached Lena, not to mock, not to question, to understand. A young private spoke first. "Ma'am, who is Rook?" Lena didn't answer immediately. She looked at the horizon, a distant point where her past and present were about to collide. Then she finally said, "Rook is the only person who ever beat me." The soldiers stared. No one knew what kind of man could defeat someone like her. But they were about to find out, and so was she. Ending of Part 3. Lead in to Part 4. As the sun began to set over Fort Branton, Lena stood alone on the training ground, the same place where she had shattered an arm, defeated 3 operatives, and heard the name she never wanted spoken again. Tomorrow, the real test would begin, because Rook was coming. And when he arrived, he wouldn't come as a friend or an ally or a memory. He would come as a weapon sharpened by the same darkness that once shaped her.
The next morning, the base was unnervingly quiet. No laughter, no whispers, no boots pounding in rhythm. Every soldier on Fort Branton knew what was coming. They weren't preparing for drills. They weren't preparing for inspections. They were preparing to witness a collision between 2 ghosts of the Shadow program, a confrontation most had only heard rumors about, and none believed they would ever see. Lena Wyatt walked across the training field alone, her breath steady, her steps controlled. She wasn't nervous, she wasn't afraid. She was focused. But beneath that focus was something else, a memory she had spent years trying to bury. The arrival. An engine roared in the distance. Every soldier looked toward the compound gate. A matte black military vehicle rolled in, stopping at the edge of the field. The door opened slowly, deliberately, and a figure stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, calm as still water, eyes like a quiet storm. He wore no insignia, no rank, no expression. But Lena knew him instantly. Rook. He was the same shape, the same presence, but there was something different now. A coldness, a heaviness, as if he'd walked through places that didn't let men come back whole. The soldiers whispered among themselves. "That's him? He looks normal. Normal doesn't scare Wyatt. Then you're not looking closely enough." Rook's gaze found Lena. He stopped walking. She didn't move. For a moment, just one, they stared at each other, like 2 predators circling the same territory. Then Rook spoke. His voice was low, quiet, and controlled. "Lena." She nodded slightly. "Rook." Colonel Cade stepped between them, savoring the tension. "Well, here we are. 2 of the program's finest, one who ran and one who remained loyal." Lena ignored him. Rook didn't even acknowledge he existed. All that mattered was the space between them, a space filled with history. The history they never spoke. The soldiers didn't know. Cade didn't know. No one on the field knew what had happened the night Lena walked away from the Shadow program. But Rook remembered, and so did she. They had trained together, bled together, survived together. Equal in every drill, opposites in every philosophy. He was precision. She was adaptability. He followed orders blindly. She questioned everything. The night she left, he had chosen the program, and she had chosen freedom. It broke something between them. Something neither of them ever repaired. And today, that break was about to become a battlefield. The demonstration. Colonel Cade lifted his hand. "This is a controlled engagement. No weapons, no—" Rook raised one finger. Cade froze. Lena raised her eyebrow. "You don't take orders from him anymore." Rook's reply was simple, I never did. Then he stepped onto the field. Lena stepped forward too. The soldiers formed a wide circle. The air felt brittle, as if the ground itself might crack. Cade backed away, suddenly realizing he had unleashed something even he couldn't control. The fight begins. Rook moved first. Not fast, not explosive. Just a single step. But that one step told Lena everything. He wasn't testing her. He wasn't measuring distance. He wasn't probing. He was attacking. Full force. Lena pivoted sideways as his fist sliced past her cheek. The soldiers gasped. Not because he was fast, but because Lena barely avoided him. This wasn't like the three operatives. This wasn't a demonstration. This was survival. Rook struck again, a palm heel aimed for her jaw. Lena rolled her shoulder, redirecting the blow. He spun into a low sweep. She jumped, flipping backward, landing softly. Rook paused. Lena steadied her stance. They circled each other, two ghosts dancing in daylight. Rook attacked again, but this time he spoke mid-strike. You shouldn't have left. Lena blocked his elbow strike. You shouldn't have stayed. He ducked under her counter and swept at her legs. You broke the program. She slid away, whipping a knee toward his ribs. The program was already broken. Rook caught her leg, but she twisted, flipped, and landed behind him. The soldiers watched in absolute silence. This wasn't just fighting. This was a conversation in a language only two people alive could speak. Strike, block, spin, counter, memory, regret, pain. For a moment, Rook slowed. You were the only one who ever understood me. Lena's eyes flicked, softening just slightly. You were the only one who ever listened. He hesitated, just long enough. She stepped in and tapped the side of his jaw, a pressure point, a stun technique. Rook staggered back. The soldiers gasped. Lena stepped out of range, breathing hard. You don't have to do this. Rook straightened. Yes, I do. The final exchange. Everything happened in 3 seconds. Rook lunged. Lena turned. He feinted high. She blocked low. He pivoted. She countered. Then Rook made his mistake. For the first time in the entire fight, he got emotional. Her name slipped out. Not as a threat, not as a challenge, but as someone remembering what they lost. Lena. And in that half-second, the precision faltered. The discipline cracked. The weapon became human. Lena saw it, and she made the choice. She didn't break his arm. She didn't knock him unconscious. She didn't humiliate him. She simply stepped forward, placed her palm on his chest, and whispered, "You're free. You don't owe the program anything." Rook froze. Then his shoulders dropped. A slow collapse of a man who'd been carrying a lifetime of orders. His voice cracked. I don't know how to be anything else. You learn, she said softly. The same way I did. For the first time, Rook's expression broke. Lena stepped back. Rook kneeled, not in defeat, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. A gesture that said, you won, not because you're stronger, but because you're free. The aftermath. Colonel Cade stormed forward, furious. You listen to me, both of you. This isn't over. You're property of the... Rook stood. No emotion, no hesitation. He spoke quietly. Say another word, and I will end your program myself. Cade stepped back. The soldiers stared. For the first time, someone had silenced Cade, and that someone wasn't Lena. It was the weapon he built. Full circle ending. Lena walked across the field, Rook beside her. The soldiers parted for them like a tide. Some looked at Lena in awe. Some looked at Rook with fear. But all of them understood the truth. Strength isn't about breaking arms. It isn't about being undefeatable. It isn't about surviving the shadows. It's about choosing who you become after the shadows let go. As they reached the far end of the field, Rook stopped and asked, "What now?" Lena looked back at the soldiers, the 282 people who had watched everything. Then she answered, "Now we teach them something the program never could." "And what's that?" Rook asked. Lena smiled softly. "Humanity."